there's only one possible way they can have relief, and you see that God has worked in their life an understanding of the gospel in a situation where most people who have even proclaimed to be believers have stumbled, but this person is the person they were when things went well. They're that person when it all fell apart. Yeah. And they stayed that they didn't mean they didn't struggle. It didn't mean that they didn't have hard times. They didn't call you or something.
But they didn't let go of God.
Yeah, and then they knew that was their only path out. And you see that they've lived what it is that we know is we've been in charge to teach, and and you've seen it. And so it's always that's such a strengthening thing from God when you see that, because there's no other way they'd have made it through.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 4 of The Summer Show, a ministry of the Bellevue Church of Owensboro, Kentucky. In today's episode, I interview Adam Neel, and we talk about the role of loyalty in the Christian life. We talk about parenting. We talk about going through some of the most difficult times of life and finding the gospel to be our strength. You're going to want to enjoy the show. Well, Adam, it is good to have you here for this episode of the Summer Show. You have been the administrative pastor here at Bellevue for just a little bit over 7.5 years. And you've been serving as my right hand here, leading the church. And your relationship with Bellevue, though, actually goes back much further. When did you first start at Bellevue? And what role did Bellevue play in the formation of your faith?
Well, I believe whatever the first Sunday that my mom brought me here after I was born would have been, that was it. But people from Bellevue had seen me before that because they came to the hospital. So
wow.
So 42 years then in that regard. As far as formation, a lot of people, but I mean the ones that are as far as like Sunday school, like I had Jean Howard taught me from kindergarten through 5th grade.
I wonder how many hundreds of kids she taught. Sunday school over the years.
Yeah, and then in middle school, high school, I had David Hibbs and Brent Parr, they all. I mean, their dedication that they always did it. I'm sure. I forget things over time, but I don't ever remember them also missing Sundays. and they were always there, and they came to extra stuff. And I mean, then lots of other families that participated in youth group or back then, like when we had like RAs and stuff, like David Ekdahl would do that, or George Thompson. There's all kinds of people, participating. But anyway, but spiritual formation, Bellevue, as when I was a kid, was my worldview, in the sense that like how everybody acted at Bellevue is how I thought everybody in the world acted. Because that was like I had like family members, but like these are the people I saw most of the time, because I was a church rat. I mean, I was here when the doors were open pretty much. So that's how I thought people acted. So then, like when I grew up and moved away and stuff, saw how different everything else was. But so it formed a lot of how I just thought people were supposed to interact with one another and everything. Because that's what I saw.
In so many ways, Bellevue's been your spiritual home. It's been kind of the place that you've been anchored to in terms of a fellowship, and it goes back deep all the way to the time you were born. Now, you did, though, go off to college, and you were gone for a good while before you came back and started serving here on staff with me. In fact, you were gone a real good while, probably 14, 15 years.
16
years. And in that period of time, you really developed a real rich background in ministry. You felt the call to ministry, and you planted a church, you pastored out west, you served in a missions organization. How has the variety of experiences in ministry prepared you uniquely for the ministry that you do right now? And right now you are the administrative pastor. You're essentially, other churches would probably call your position the executive pastor. You're my right arm. You help me lead the staff, run a whole lot of the systems, and make sure that ministry works well, both on the resource side and the human resource side. And but how have all those experiences prepared you for these last 7.5 years and the years that are going to come?
I've had my hand in almost every hat.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten to travel to do mission work, been helped manage the money and asking for money and everything for an organization that's just getting started.
Yeah.
Anyway, planning a church, you have to wear every hat. Like,
sure do.
So I had to learn to play guitar and be willing to sing and stuff up in front of people. But this job also is a jack of all trades, master of none. There's been times since I've been here where I've been needed to fill in for youth pastor or children's director or whatever, and so I've been used
in interim periods.
That's right, right. So it's prepared me in a sense that I've done all sat in different seats, dealt with all these different things.
Yeah.
I'm used to being pulled in separate directions at the same time, and hopefully being able to do all those things at once.
Yeah, which is certainly what ministry's like here at Bellevue.
Yeah.
You get pulled in 4 or 5 different directions all at once. We're big enough that we can create some level of specialization, but we're not so big that you can be specialized, narrowly specialized.
Yeah.
Everybody has to kind of roll up their sleeves and do a variety of jobs. And well, let me ask you this. And this shifts this a little bit. Ever since I first met you, when I became pastor here, my first few months here, I remember you and I went out to eat. You had come home from your freshman year of college at UK, and we went out to a Chinese buffet, and I got to know you. And you were 19 years old. I was probably, I think, 30 at the time. And the one thing I got from you immediately is this is a guy who loves Scripture and has a passion and a love for theology and is a deep thinker. And that was true of you when you were a teenager. That's true of you now. In fact, it's one of the things that people in our congregation recognize is something you bring to the table and is value adding to our church. It's been value adding to our staff. I've watched all of our staff become more acutely sensitive and interested in theology with you in the mix and you in the team. And so the question that I have is this: when can you remember capturing a love for the Bible and the study of theology? And how has that fueled your love for God and your ministry?
It was twofold. My dad had a subscription to Table Talk magazine from R.C. Sproul and when I was a teenager, and you would get his monthly just discussion points of all kinds of various theological or topics going on in society and everything. But you get an audio tape and a book. And I had always, as I would read Scripture, things that I thought were there, or I thought that Scripture was saying, I never could articulate, didn't know anyone else who thought that way, or any of these types of things. And then I remember reading a book from R.C. Sproul, and he's outlining his soteriology, and as he does it, he
stop for a moment. Soteriology is the study of
salvation.
Of salvation.
Yeah,
yes.
how we get saved, and he goes back through history, and he says this is what Augustine and Luther and Jonathan Edwards, and I was like, these are all people I've heard of. I know who they are. Wait, they all agree? Oh, and it, and his very relaxed but unbelievably intelligent way of presenting stuff that's very difficult to understand heightened my interest tremendously. And then secondly, when I got to college, the pastor of the church that I went to bent over backwards for me to make time for me. I would nail him with question after question, like until I'm sure he was like ready to go. He had these plastic lawn chairs, those that like stacked, those cheap white ones, and he'd just put them out on the lawn next to his office because he knew I'd be showing up, and we'd just go sit outside, and he'd take whatever I had to ask, and he strongly encouraged me to go to seminary, and was just always so gentle and kind. I never knew that I had a question that irritated him, or I never knew that I had a question that he might have thought was stupid or whatever the case was. Never knew. He was just always very kind with all of it. And those two things, he developed my love then for Scripture, in that the depth of God is a bottomless well, and so then the more you knew, the more you wanted to know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That had to have been, you must have an emotional touch point in your memory about that man, for a man to have not shut you down in your curiosity, but to make himself available, create lawn chair margin for you to be able to explore something with his guidance. That had to have been, you must look back on that as such a rich gift.
Yes. Very sadly, he would, years later, he'd end up taking his life, and so don't have him anymore around. But he, I knew how that church was exploding in growth when he came, because of him coming. Actually, it had been struggling until he came, and then he came, and it did, and the requests upon him were, numerous. They had a school they ran, K through 12, that ended up having to have 3 separate campuses because so many people were coming to it, and then the church ended up taking on a big building program because the church was greatly expanded, and he made time, and like I said, there was nothing off limits to talk to him about,
right?
And so that, I mean, it just made an impression to me too about how you're supposed then also to deal with people as a pastor, how you talk to people, how you treat them and everything. Yeah.
So you learn much from this man, but man, I cannot not go back to something you just said. Because you said, sadly, we don't have him anymore because he took his life.
Yeah.
So this is a man who, deep theological thinker, a great pastor, a leader that brought, it was a spark for growth in the church, and yet sometime later commits suicide. What did that do to you? How did that impact you?
It was October of 2004. Wow,
you remember?
Yeah, first week. I think it was the 4th, but it might have been the 3rd. But I remember the phone call I got. I was at first I was angry with him.
Yeah.
For a man that had been so selfless to be so selfish, his wife that he left behind has MS. So who's going to help take care of her? His son was overseas due to the war going on at the time. I can't remember where his daughter was, but all these things he left behind. And then there was the public note, and then there was something else he had written that some of us got to hear. And it wasn't, at least at first glance, wasn't all that encouraging of him. And I can remember just talking with other friends that knew him and people who, one of my best friends, when he was a pastor in another city, and he was in college, he was pastoring a church where he was in college. And so he actually introduced us. That's how we became really good friends, is he said, I think you'd really get along with this person. You need to go, you need to go see him. And sure enough, I mean, he was dead on, and we've been friends ever since. But but for somebody that always seemingly had the right thing to say and the kindest way to say it, was the rare person that's intelligent but never makes you feel stupid, can explain the most incredibly difficult things to the person who has the hardest time understanding it. How could he have this emptiness at this part of him?
Right.
You know, and I remember, and so anyway, the long story short of it, Brian Chappell was his friend who Brian used to be president of Covenant Theological Seminary in St. Louis, and wrote the book on preaching that everybody my age and
I read it too.
Yeah, Christ-centered preaching. Brian came and gave his funeral, and God spoke well through Brian in giving a lot of us. I still listen to the sermon maybe once a year still.
Wow.
But Brian, because we all knew how much Brian hurt because they went to seminary together. They were in each other's weddings. They were very close to each other. And so you knew Brian felt like all the rest of us felt. And so his words then also, and Brian is like solid, like gospel guy. So like whatever he's saying, he's not trying to make some pathway for Petrus because he was his friend, or trying to do the thing to salve everybody's conscience. So you knew whatever he was going to say, he felt truth. He felt bound. And so that helped. But I mean, there's still like, when do you not miss anybody that's gone?
Well, the reason I bring this out, A, because you presented it, but B, that, I see us pastors are just human beings. And we can be troubled with depression. We can be tempted to sin. We can get selfish. So pastors and ministers and Christian leaders of all stripes can have times in their ministry or life where they fail others around them. And certainly taking your own life when people are looking to you to be their shepherd is one of those times, and a really rough way to end what you started so well. And a lot of times people they experience that, and you can imagine that their faith could be destroyed. Hey, this person who had this great faith that seemed to help them cope with life, in the end, they didn't cope with life. They checked out. And yet, I want to say to people, hey, wait a second. Don't put this person on a pedestal. They taught you well here, and here. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. you can be the one that carries the faith in a way that they didn't in the end. But you don't need to throw out what they gave you that was so solid.
Yeah.
You must have somehow processed something like that in your mind, because you still took all that he gave you, and you didn't say, oh, well, you didn't despair because he had despaired in the end.
Right. Well, I mean, as time went on and everything, came to have two really understandings about it. Yeah, Petrus failed.
Is that his name?
Yeah. Little Greek man, and Peter the Rock was his name, Petrus Rucus. But he failed. But the other side of it also was that his church failed him. It was a both and. They did not think, because he did do all of these things so well, that therefore he felt that it was impossible for himself to share any struggles with anyone, because then how could Petrus doesn't mess up? Petrus doesn't, do these things wrong. He doesn't have anything, so he didn't. Pedestal. Yeah, so he didn't feel like he had anybody in the world to talk to.
Wow.
And he suffered from depression. The responsibility, the church, as it got bigger, he felt the weight of the responsibility for all those souls that were entrusted to the church where he was. And then everybody's like, oh, but you do it so well, and you're just so good, this and that. So if he's having any of the same struggles that everybody else has, he can't say that, he felt. I mean, and the elders there recognized this afterwards. They're in that, and he just didn't. So he felt all alone.
Yeah.
And then no one else could know who he was other than himself.
That's why it's so important that even here at Bellevue that we create this atmosphere where no matter what, in leadership, there's aspects of our lives that are always going to feel alone. Leadership, whether you're a lay leader or a staff member of a church or something like that, there's going to be moments where you got to stand alone, or you got to, we need to, in every way possible, we need to make it such where we aren't alone, and that where we can share our burdens, and where we have a vent,
right.
Because it could be life or death. Ministry and life, period, responsibilities in any venue of life can become overwhelming, and sometimes tip the scales in terms of our ability to balance out our own emotional reserves versus the emotional demands. And well, thank you for sharing that. You talked about thinking theologically, having a pastor in your college years that helped you think theologically. You talked about influences of thinkers like R.C. Sproul, that was a part of a publication that your dad had a subscription to. What are some of your favorite theological thinkers? You mentioned R.C. Sproul. Are there others? And why? Why them?
Well, to try and limit it just a few here. One that you and I share, Tim Keller.
Yes.
Tim Keller, his ability to speak the gospel to almost any audience.
Yeah.
Since he's been a pastor in Manhattan for 32 years, you have every single type of person in the world comes through New York, and his ability in his grandfatherly way of just being able to speak very heavy truths, but never, you don't feel like it while he's doing it. And he's super smart, but very, what was the guy's name? Garrison Keeler, you know what I mean? Like he's,
that's right.
Yeah, he's very.
He doesn't shoot over your head.
No.
But he doesn't dumb it down.
No.
And that takes a skill. There's an art, linguistic communication art in that.
Yeah. Graham Goldsworthy, who used to teach at Moore Theological College in Sydney, Australia. He was the one who first, I got introduced to seeing Christ in the entirety of the Bible, as opposed to having the Bible be the New Testament, which is about Jesus, and the Old Testament, which is about angry, old, stubborn God.
Which isn't true.
Right.
It's a misperception,
so he says that in Luke 24, 24 through 27 and 44 through 47, where Jesus is explaining to the disciples that all of this has been pointing to what has just happened. The gospel it's all been about Jesus.
Right.
And he's like, well, if that's the case, then we need to go back and look at these things without pulling them out of their context. But so there was still an author and an audience that they were writing to, but that ultimately it's pointing you to Christ because he said so. He said he's the fulfillment of all Scripture, so he must be.
Right.
And so that Graham Goldsworthy was hugely influential. And then I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna leave out lots of things, but I would say too, though, like preachers, like people. Herschel York's as gifted as anybody.
Sure, yeah. He's a mutual friend of yours
and I mean, God's gifted him both as a storyteller, but a theologian, and just his voice.
A quality person, too.
Yep. He's a good fella.
It goes beyond his skill.
Yeah. And I don't know. And then I like listening to Ligon Duncan as a preach. I mean, there's lots more, but like I'd say, like, just to have like the most immediate and widest ranging impact, those people probably have it.
Right.
I mean, well, R.C. Sproul wins over all of them, because I wouldn't even know who any of those people were that I just said if it hadn't been for him.
Sure.
But I failed to mention, because I got mocked.
And he is, to some extent, kind of a father to some of those others.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because in my first preaching class that I ever took, we got a pre-copy of Tim Keller's first book on preaching. And it was just they ran it off on the copy machine, and it hadn't been to the publisher, finished and everything. It had like skull and crossbones on it, and saying you can't make copies of this and everything. And the professor had gotten permission to do it, and everybody in the class was just like so excited. They were like looking at it and everything, and I said too loudly, "Who's Tim Keller?" Like, I was like, I don't know who he is. And everybody turned around and looked at me. He doesn't know who Tim Keller is? And I was like, oh, sorry.
Since then, you've actually gone to New York and visited his church.
That's right. Yeah.
And you and I both like him because he's able to speak to the post-Christian mind in a way that doesn't naturally offend.
Right.
Now, I mean, the gospel always is an offense, He
doesn't make himself the offense, though.
He doesn't make himself the offense.
Yeah.
And he doesn't change his effect. He's not he is a tremendous communicator, but he's not an orator. It's not. He doesn't have like a preaching style. He's just simply himself in the pulpit, and he's intelligent. And
very even demeanor. Yeah.
Yeah, and he knows his audience, whether his audience is the staff at Google or it's a bunch of Baptists or Presbyterians in a local church that have been there for years.
Right.
Now, okay, I'm going to take a hard turn here and talk a little bit about you. You and I have a lot of fun together, and yet I see you many times, even in the same day, I can see you at two extremes. I can see you personally as a fiercely serious person, serious theologically, serious about ministry, serious about everything. But then I've also seen you laugh and not be able to stop laughing. And even when the rest of us want you to stop laughing, you just keep on going, and your mind goes into humor. What kinds of things make you laugh in a way that you can hardly stop?
It's I mean, it can be.
It's usually sarcasm. That's
sarcasm has a lot that can go a long way, but it's stuff that's. Usually it's stuff that's quirky. It catches me off guard, like that, or it shouldn't be funny. I don't mean in a inappropriate way, but it's just something that happened that really wasn't funny, but it was like it ended up being. Hope I've made her mad sometimes at night. Like I'll think of something, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll think of something and I'll start laughing. And she feels the bed shaking, and she's like, "Are you over there laughing?" I was like, "Yeah, I can't help it." Like I thought of something that was funny that had happened, and so yeah, I mean, but things like like Dumb and Dumber or Christmas Vacation. I mean, those are funny. Like there's like no part about that. But other times it's always, it seems to be the things that make me laugh for the longest are the things that it just was surprising. It struck me as strange at the moment, and then it became funny.
Yeah. But it's just I've noticed that your pendulum can swing from the very, very serious to just hilarious, and that's a rich part of who you are. I guess I'm digging a little bit at things that cause you to feel. One of the things that I have noticed about you is that there are times when deep theological truths, but especially deep theological truths manifesting in the lives of real people who are either going through real challenges or experiencing real exhilaration. And I've seen you be deeply affected, even emotionally affected, when you've seen that manifestation of the good news of Jesus in someone's life. And so there have been times when you and I have both discussed challenges, and we've felt and shared our emotions of fear and hurt. You and I, being in kind of tandem leadership sometimes, you and I have to sometimes go into the toughest ministry situations that are the most kind of charged with energy and sometimes even could be inspire great anxiety. And we have to go into those things, and we can together feel a lot of emotion in those moments. So both of us have shared with one another our own emotional range, our deep feelings about certain things. And one of the things, I know that you have a great depth of feeling, particularly about things that really matter to you. And I have watched you. I've watched you in preaching, and I know it comes out of a place of real sincerity. I've watched you when you and I are sitting in your office talking about the lives of people that we mutually care about at this church. And sometimes they're going through a tough time, and you and I will be discussing their circumstance, and I see in you deep emotion. And what in life and ministry most moves you to feel the grace of God? Because a lot of times when you and I have experienced positive emotion in those times that have led us to sometimes even share tears, has been those moments where we see God's grace manifest in a moment. And it's just, it's like the song, Amazing Grace, it overwhelms us. And I see that in you. What is it that most brings that emotional response?
I think some of it is seeing when you've known somebody well, and you've seen the pain that they've endured. Maybe you've walked with them through some of it, or just you can at the very least just empathize with what it is that they've had happen. And then you see the relief that comes. There's only one possible way they can have relief, and you see that God has worked in their life an understanding of the gospel in a situation where most people who have even proclaimed to be believers have stumbled, but this person is the person they were when things went well. They're that person when it all fell apart. And they stayed that they didn't mean they didn't struggle. It didn't mean that they didn't have hard times. They didn't call you or something.
But they didn't let go of God.
Yeah, and then they knew that was their only path out. And you see that they lived they've lived what it is that we know is we've been in charge to teach, and and you've seen it, and so it's always that's such a strengthening thing from God when you see that, because there's no other way they'd have made it through whatever it was.
It's in those moments faith is real. Faith in God is not some kind of pipe dream.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yes.
And I've always seen that when you've preached and this moment when the Holy Spirit seems to grip you with this overwhelming sense of, I've just touched the hem of God's garment, you know, I mean, that where grace intersects with human life. And you've always, it's one thing I love about you is you always have had this sense of awe in that moment where grace meets the guts and the grit of life and brings a glory. You know, it's a beautiful thing about you. You've always had a sensitivity to that.
There's two parts to our Christian, well, I mean, there's more than this, but like, it was always really well done for me growing up, telling me about my duty, my responsibility, which is certainly true.
Right.
Sure. I mean, it is a duty, it is responsibility for how you act, how you speak. You represent church, represent the gospel, but it's also this privilege, and so that he who made all things considered you worthy to not just present his name, but present his name before his people, or those who even don't yet know him, but that you stand in representation of him at that particular moment. Is I don't know how that ever loses its poignancy, its effect upon you.
I think that's one of the reasons why here at Bellevue, if there's anything I want us to do more and more, is help people see this intersection of the grit and guts of life and the gospel, and then how that just brings God's glory. I mean, he redeems each moment, and he takes, he brings glory out of ashes, and you just can't get enough of that.
Right.
Those are the jewels of the kingdom.
Well, we wrongfully divorced, and I'll get off of it, but like that somehow that God's glory and our happiness are not the same thing.
Yeah.
His glorification is what makes you happy.
Oh yeah.
And everything else at the end makes you miserable.
Right.
And you can always see it, because at the end, if whatever it is that you pursued, if you're more oftentimes than not, especially as you get older, you get bitter. And you can see that, and so therefore, why don't want to waste time going after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about something that, and I don't think I've ever asked you this. It comes out of something I've observed about you since you were, long before you became a staff member here, because, I met you when you were 19 coming home from your freshman year of college, and then I would see you at holiday times and different things. And then we ended up having periodically, we developed a relationship, and periodically we would talk, or, as you were in ministry and doing various things at different times. And so I got to follow along and watch you. I watched you become a man. I watched you become a family man. I watched you take care of your family. And this is, I think, if someone asked me, tell me about Adam in one word, I would choose the word loyalty. And I have seen you manifest loyalty in life. I have experienced personally your loyalty in our relationship as we lead together. I have seen that. But I've also witnessed that loyalty in your relationship with your wife, your kids, with your sister, with your family, with your parents, with your mom. And I've watched even that loyalty guide you in decisions where you've even set aside personal dreams and even set aside personal goals for a season in order to take care of those people that you were loyal to. And it's always been very inspiring, but where do you think that comes from?
Two parts. One might not be helpful at all. And one, there is no other way to see it. In other words, what I mean is when presented sometimes with some of these things that seem as though that I have two paths placed before me to choose, I don't see it that way. There was only one thing to do. There's only, and I've seen it demonstrated.
What do you mean there's only one way, one thing
so
to do?
In other
Because
words,
there's times that I've seen you where you could have chosen a path that seemed good for you or good for something that you had wanted, but you chose to let go and sacrifice that in order to take care of family, someone that was depending on you, and you could have gone either way.
Right.
But what you're telling me then is, but it wasn't, you didn't have the choice in your head. In your head, it was, I got to set this aside to take care of this.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the only thing there is to do. Like there wasn't something else to consider. So a couple of things. Like one, my mom's mom, my grandmother, she raised my mom by herself and worked very hard for very little money, and was like dedicated, coming to church, helping, and so when she was coming out of high school, she wanted to be an airline stewardess. She wanted to see the world, and but her dad had a heart attack, and fairly severe, and I mean severe too. At this time in the 20th century, there wasn't a lot they could do for you much anyway, and he would pass away at a very young age, and but she didn't do what she wanted to go do. She felt she needed to take care of him. She felt responsibility to make sure that she did all the right things, like to try and help take care of my mom and have things, other people fill in with things that she couldn't do, like these ladies, school teacher and people come in, live in to teach my mom how to play piano and do all this other kind of stuff. But anyway, so I remember when I was, 7, 8 years old, I can remember riding in the car with her, and I was mad because anytime that she had a Saturday off, especially when I was that age, I wanted to go stay all night with her because she'd do whatever it is that I wanted to go do, and everything. But her mom, my great grandmother, was sick, and they had to go put her in a nursing home here in town, and she would go over there like every day to go and spend like a lot of time. And I go, I don't understand why you got to keep going over there to go see her. She's not even nice to you. She's not even thankful that like you're coming. Yeah. And she never complained. She never argued. She didn't say, yeah, that stinks, or I wish she would be nicer, or like she never, I mean, she may have. I just never heard it. And she just said, you know, it's my mom. It's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know, and so.
And that had an effect on you.
Yeah, yeah. So then the 30,000 foot view, then, you know, everything, like you see people's lives and things that they gave up, either for yourself or, you know, or for somebody else. And they didn't have a regret or or I wish I could have done this differently, or that stinks, it happened to me. I wish I'd had this person's life, or, you know, all that. They didn't. And like, so you see that then like as an obvious evidence of, you know, the gospel in their lives, because who'd be willing to give up all those things? Because otherwise it's nonsensical. It's crazy. Like, why would you do something like that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, so, but yeah, so I mean, it was demonstrated.
So you saw it and it imprinted on you.
Yeah. I mean, she was like that all the way. And even when she had dementia, I don't know. One of the last times I remember being able to have like a real conversation with her, and not the things that would come about because of the dementia, but she just said, I was visiting her, I'd come into town and everything, and she said, I just hope that whatever happens, that I don't live long enough to be a burden on your mom.
Yeah.
And so like when that's your only, like your lucid moment, that's what you thought.
Right.
You know. So
you were thinking about other people.
Yeah. So
you had inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, she's not the only one. But I remember, I just remember those things the most, because I was around her so much.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, there's so much to that, because we as Christians, we're presented so many times with, hey, are we going to pursue our own comforts, or are we going to sacrifice something for somebody else?
Right.
Are we going to get something in our head that we have to have this, and then forget the fact that there's people around us that need some other things? And sometimes we have to let go of things, even let go of big dreams, in order to, and there's times when it's not appropriate to let go of dreams, and other people need to adjust to us. But you miss out on something of love if you're not willing to roll with the punches that other people get hit with,
right,
and help them in that. I've seen that too with your mom, who had a stroke a couple years ago, a little bit more than that, and you were there for her, and still are there for her, as others in your family are, and she, of course, loved you that way, and you're loving her that way, and anyway, it's inspiring. It's a good pastoral example to all of us, and I admire that about you. Tell us about your wife, Hope. You met her in college, didn't you? How quickly after meeting Hope did you know that you wanted to marry her?
We had not been dating 3 months yet when I proposed to her.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So pretty quick.
Sure. So you probably already figured it out even before the 3 months.
Right. Yeah. Our first date was on October 15th, and I think January the 6th I proposed, if I remember right. Right about that. So it'd been, not quite 3 months. So.
I remember when I was interviewing you, as we were all interviewing you for this position almost 8 years ago, the way you described your relationship, or the privilege that you had to marry Hope, is that you said you outkicked your coverage.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always joked. Like, I told her she doesn't remember the first time that I met her. It was a year before, and I saw her, and I was like, I gotta go talk to her. Went up to go talk to her, and she just, all she did, she goes, "My name's Hope," and then she walked off, and I was like, okay.
Well, you got something out of it.
Yeah, and she doesn't remember any of that like at all, other than I've repeated that story numerous times. So then the next year we were on a traveling drama team at the Baptist Student Union, Baptist College Ministry now, right? BCM.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Yeah, we were there on that team together, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try again. And I had other friends that if I didn't try again, they had already let me know that they were going to try, and I couldn't have that. So anyway,
yeah, that happened with me too. I remember I was becoming very interested in Stephanie, and then I overheard a boy say that he was going to ask her out.
Yeah.
And it ends up something thwarted. It was the Lord that thwarted his ability to ask her out. And but because he was he was kind of a well-liked young man in our BSU, and so I thought that he would probably win out over me. And it ends up everything was frustrated for him, and he wasn't able to. So I was able to step in there and take the cake. So,
there you go. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Now you have 3 kids, and they're great kids, a lot of fun. And you got one that's is he a teenager yet? Is he 13?
He will be in September.
All right, really, really close to teenage years. You're probably experiencing some of the teenage rumblings already. And then you have your one girl, and she is just joy, happiness so much of the time. And then you have a little son. I know, and I've always been blessed by how intentional you have been in seeking to impart the faith to your sons and your daughter, as well as just to prepare them for life. You've been very intentional. You spend time with them. You make a priority of them. But this is the question that I want to ask. What is it? Like, we could plunge, and we don't have time now, but maybe someday I'd love to have a conversation with you for the audience and be able to plunge the depth of what are the things that you do to impart the faith to your kids? What practices, what disciplines, what even serendipitous things, that you do on occasion? We don't have a lot of time for that, but what is it that you are most determined to impart to your children in order to rear them up in the admonition of the Lord and prepare them for life? What are the things that you go, my kids need this, and I need to take responsibility to make sure they have these elements in their life?
That the gospel has a direct relationship to absolutely every single solitary thing that they do. That there is never a divorce between their life at school or relationships with friends or whatever, and then like church or their individual life and God, like that. All of it's together, and all of it says something about what they think about it, and all of it has to be thought through in a manner in which the decision you're making, hopefully that you're conscious that you are making a statement about the gospel, or you are making a statement about what you believe about God, and that every answer to every question, even if the answer is you just have to trust that God knows what he's doing, every answer to every question is found in the gospel, that everything is summed up in Christ, or nothing is.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a waste of time otherwise. So that they, I try to repeat that, and hopefully sometimes to their chagrin make situations either awkward or take longer than they should have, because we'll pause to have a discussion about such things. But but that's what I hope that they when they've grown up, that's what they're able to do, and that it's like it's ingrained in them, that it's a natural way of thinking.
Well, with you, no doubt they will. What is it that you, and I'm sure this is included in that, so you don't have to state that again, but if you, or not if, when your children, and pray that they're very much adult children at the time, attend your funeral or speak at your funeral, what is it that you hope they will most remember and cherish about you and their relationship with you?
That they would have no doubt that whatever that the things that they found good in me for them were easily attributable to God being gracious to them, and that they would see any failings that I had as attributable to me, and not to God, but they were my failings, but that hopefully that they but that they would see that I've tried to be honest with them about my failings, and so that they would, things that we'll see how it turns out, but things that I think that sometimes kids want to know but wouldn't know how to ask, wouldn't know how to get it out of their parents, and so sometimes just say, well, this is what was in my head. Yeah. This is what I was thinking. And
but they got to know you.
Yeah, and so therefore, with your kids, you can't hide who you are, for it. So, but that they are appreciative of the things that I was able to do that were good for them, but appreciative because it was something ultimately that God gave to them in me. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's a good place to stop. But I always like to have these interviews end with what I call a rapid fire session, where I ask a bunch of questions, and not all of them are very weighty, but it helps us in a real quick way get to know some things about you.
Okay.
And I've not prepared you with these questions, so you don't know what I'm going to ask. So you ready?
Go for it.
Okay. When it comes to food, Mexican or Chinese?
Chinese.
Chinese. Okay. If you could take your wife to any place in the world, specifically for a romantic getaway, what would it be? Where would it be?
Turks and Caicos, and where we got to go back for our 20th anniversary, where we got to go on our honeymoon.
Oh, okay.
She loves it. I do as well.
So you'd want to go back?
Yep.
It's like, okay, that was good, worth coming back for. All right. Favorite secular author?
I guess I enjoyed reading. Well, it's close. It's tight between either. I'm a nerd, so either Tolstoy, because I've read War and Peace 6 or 7 times.
Wow,
I love it. Or we'll just say that then. Well,
okay, Tolstoy.
Yeah.
All right. Type of movie, superhero or comedy? Which would you prefer?
My money's gone to superhero, so here lately. So I guess that.
Okay, superhero.
Yeah.
What home project? Like, you've done some home projects and stuff like that, where you got to build something at home or fix something or set something up. What home projects are you most proud of?
I poured a concrete pad
Oh, okay.
This year, and I thought that would be a disaster, and it actually turned out well.
Turned out good.
I put sprinklers in my yard. I dug that and laid the sprinklers in, and then we got, I don't know how many years ago it was now. We got a hot tub, and I did all the electrical for it.
Oh wow!
And
yeah, I don't.
Hope wasn't happy with that. First, it's like, you sure, and everything. I was like, I wouldn't do it. I didn't think I could do it, and then I was like, look, if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one that gets in, and I'll get electrocuted, and I'll take care of it. And so,
as long as you're insured.
Yeah, but like it worked. It worked. So, and that was really hard. So it was, but I guess those, I don't know. There's been a bunch though. As it seems, every year there's more.
That's why I crafted that question just for you. Okay, here's a hard one: U of L or UK?
Oh, UK. Don't even say the other.
I think anybody that knows you knows what answer that was.
Yeah.
Adam, this was a pleasure.
I enjoyed it, Greg.
Thank you for letting us dig deep into life and into your life and even some of your thoughts. And it is such a tremendous blessing to me to do life with you. We have a real brotherhood with one another. I pray that we have many years of rolling up our sleeves and serving this church and the kingdom of God together. I think we're good for each other, and you certainly are a great partner in ministry for me. And God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you. I've been very grateful for the opportunity that God's afforded me through you, serving with you. God has. You have many of the gifts that I lack, and so therefore too, it's always a privilege to get to see how it is that you minister to people, how you care and take care of people, especially see it on a day-to-day basis. And it's been very thankful for the time that we've had, and I pray God gives us many more.
Let's do it for many more years to come. And you know what? You have many of the gifts and talents that I lack, and I think that's why you and I partner well together.
Yeah,
and hopefully,
maybe so.
hopefully we can be a gift to the church as we seek to serve them.
Yeah.
Well, God bless you, and thank you for this time.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.